As the elevator doors began to close, a message lit up my phone like a tiny beacon of doom. Dinner starts at 7 o'clock. Don't be late. Below it, a snapshot of my family gathered around the table, every seat taken except for mine, as if they decided Christmas would roll out with a side of exclusion. Thanks for the heads up, I muttered sarcastically to the empty air, angst brewing inside me like a bad casserole. When I finally made it back to my apartment, the universe wasn't done punishing me. A notification popped up, revealing a bill for Serena's car, a whopping $25,000. No hello, no how are you, just a good old-fashioned demand for cash. Apparently, not being invited home didn't exclude me from footing the bill. The silence of my apartment grew heavier, pressing down on me like wet laundry. I grew up in a house where silence was king. My dad, Grant, spoke in short, biting commands as if he had a word limit. My mom, Elise, acted as a balloon, trying to float above the heaviness, but never quite intervening. And then there was Serena, my younger sister, eternally basking under Dad's spotlight. From the very beginning, it was obvious I was competing for space I didn't even want. I remember one winter afternoon at 11, pulling an old computer tower onto the kitchen table. Dust danced around us like confetti as I opened it, hoping to decipher the circuitry's secrets. Without a wayward glance, Dad strode into the room. His words. Waste of time. Ouch. Meanwhile, Serena zipped in happily, presenting her artistic endeavor, a horse in a crown. She got a warm smile and ruffled hair, while I just stood there, my chest tightening with stark contrast. There was no escaping that feeling. I wasn't the chosen one. Fast forward to my 16th birthday, and I got a disappointing handshake, while Serena left with a used car that smelled mysteriously of Dad's priorities. When she scratched it against a pillar, Dad pointed fingers my way, claiming I should have taught her to park. Serena murmured an apology but let my perceived liability swell like a balloon during Dad's impromptu court. I became the invisible scapegoat while she basked in applause. It was easier for all of us that way. In high school, my science fair ribbons were met with smiles from Elise, but those certificates slipped into a drawer, hidden from view. Serena's cheer trophies ruled the hallway like a gaudy trophy case, drawing adoration from guests. I learned quickly to find solace in the shadows, existing in the quiet limbo of missed recognition. When I got accepted into a cybersecurity program in college, Dad's sigh echoed across the phone as if I'd just told him I was switching to underwater basket weaving. Looking back now, it was all just a cycle. Dinner invitations were part of a patterned dance I had grown accustomed to long before Christmas came around. They didn't need me. I wasn't the melody, just background noise that played on repeat. So, the bill landing right after that exclusion was a cruel stroke of serendipity. The unexpected twist. Life had just pulled back the curtain to reveal the same old show. The email's subject line hit me like a brick, no finesse, just bluntness. It felt like a reminder that money meant nothing to the sender. My father, Grant Rowan, had a knack for the emotionally void. His note, shared with my mother, Elise, and sister, Serena, had a simple demand: handle this before the end of the month. No context. No hello. Just the weight of expectation hanging heavily in the air. For a moment, I stared at the blinking cursor, my frustration bubbling to the surface. Serena had a history of being reckless with her car, managing to scrape it up a couple of times before. But this was different this time. It was about them asking me to foot the bill for her antics, and they hadn't even bothered to invite me home for the holidays. My phone buzzed, pulling me back to reality. A text from Serena popped up, dripping with nonchalance: just take care of it. Dad's stressed. It's not a big deal. Not a big deal. I casually tossed the phrase around in my mind as if it were confetti, selfish magic words used whenever she wanted to make her problems vanish. I flipped my phone over, the flickering light casting erratic shapes on my table. Outside, the snow was gently falling, a serene sight obscured by the turmoil inside me. My apartment felt colder than the wintry night outside. I was stuck between a quiet longing to tune them out and a growing urge to acknowledge the years of responsibility that felt like a heavy chain around my neck. They had doped me up on neglect and now expected me to leap back in line when it was convenient for them. Scrolling through our family group chat was like getting slapped with a reality check, a collage of my family living it up without me. There was Serena, laughing at something I wasn't privy to, Elise grinning with a tray of cookies, and Grant carving into a roast that I wouldn't taste. My empty seat felt more like a gaping wound than a simple absence, but it was more brutal than sadness. The realization scared me. They had planned things around my absence like I just didn't belong in the picture. I took a deep breath and put my phone down. Something within me ignited, a flicker of defiance. I slipped my fingers across to my laptop, the glow illuminating my dark kitchen. Just looking at it felt like a confrontation, a reminder of everything I'd achieved despite them. I opened my financial dashboard, a matrix of numbers starting to tell a story they'd never asked about. Each figure whispered of late nights and dodged phone calls, everything they never acknowledged now staring me down. Grant's stern email echoed in my head as I evaluated the messages and memories. The empty chair and looming car bill underlined the demand as if my existence was solely for cleaning up the messes they made. I leaned in closer, a silent vow swelling within me. They had made me an invisible patch for their wounds, assuming I'd always be there to absorb whatever hit the family. But I had been growing stronger and wouldn't continue being a ghost hidden in their holiday cheer. Revisiting the bank account tied to the car loan was like punching a wall of reality. My name didn't even grace it. It belonged to Serena, of course, her reckless decisions neatly swaddled in my father's interpretation of responsibility. My stomach twisted, realizing what was clear. They thought they could just delegate their mess to me with no regard for the years I spent carving my own identity. That unplanned balance of familial love and obligations was crumbling, and I was ready to reformulate my own story. The cursor blinked ominously beside the contact number, tempting but ignored for now. Instead, I flipped open a notebook and scribbled down 3 precise lines. Car loan. Due amount, $25,000. Ownership, Serena plus Grant. My handwriting appeared steady. No wild strokes of anger, just a clean, controlled representation of my new reality. I flipped to the next page. Christmas invite list? Nope, not here. Dinner conversations could wait. Turning to the following page, I wrote, pattern contribution, expected, presents, optional. I leaned back, soaking in the words. They didn't lash out, they clarified my thoughts, outlining clear boundaries with logic instead of emotion. It was like drawing a sharp line in the sand, simple yet necessary. My notebook felt less like a diary and more like my personal roadmap of accountability, and I closed it with a satisfying snap. The quiet in my apartment shifted, morphing from cozy retreat to an actual command center. Fueled by a newfound determination, I rummaged through the drawer by the sink and unearthed a folder overflowing with documents I'd ignored for too long. Partnership agreements, revenue summaries, projected valuations. Each paper was a testament that I had something worth knowing, even if my family had never thought so. I meticulously spread them out on the table, aligning their edges to create a grid. It felt like assembling evidence for a case, my case. It was a visual map not only of where I had been but, more importantly, of where I was going. Revenge wasn't my game. I craved distance instead, marked by cold, hard facts rather than anything as messy as feelings. Suddenly, the bank's number flashed on my phone once more, and I tapped it with a newfound confidence. A calm, automated voice responded, "Please hold while we connect you." My fingers curled around the edge of the counter, grounding me. This wasn't rage, just clarity washing over me, a stark contrast to the emotional whirlpool I had been navigating. Moments later, a human voice broke through the din. "How can I assist you?" she asked. I spoke evenly, each word deliberate. "I need to report a vehicle for repossession. The owner has defaulted." As the woman asked for documentation, I rattled off every detail tied to the loan, provided by my family in their forwarded bill, a simple task to untangle myself from obligation. When she inquired about my relationship to the owner, I responded without falter, "I'm not responsible for the loan." My voice was calm, yet firm. I knew my family believed I was there to fix their chaos, but I wasn't about to play that role anymore. There was a slight pause on the line, as if she was weighing whether to pry further. Thankfully, she didn't. Instead, she processed my request and confirmed the next steps. After I thanked her and hung up, a wave of relief washed over me. It felt like switching off a glaring light, a clean, final gesture. I didn't feel victorious, no, I felt settled. The apartment murmured around me, the gentle hum of the refrigerator like a soothing lullaby. My reflection in the balcony glass showed a woman transformed, straight shoulders, hair pulled back, eyes clear and focused. I opened my email next, ready to take on whatever came next. The moment I laid eyes on my father's message, a wave of annoyance washed over me. "We need you to transfer the money tonight." Yeah, right. I had no intention of opening that Pandora's box. Below, Serena's email didn't do much to lift my spirits either. "Please don't make this harder than it needs to be." Tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. I hastily clicked on new email, fingers tense and hovering over the keyboard. In a fit of pure defiance, I addressed Grant Rowan, ceasing both Elise and Serena. Subject line: "Regarding the car body." With steely resolve, I typed those liberating words, "I won't be covering the bill. Not my circus, not my monkeys." After a few moments of thorough contemplation, trust me, it wasn't about the tone. I hit send. That tiny click as it left my outbox felt like a climactic bang, shaking the very foundations of my family's expectations. There it was, my daring declaration hanging in the digital ether. I shut my laptop, watching the screen fade to black, a symbolic gesture of my newfound autonomy. The apartment lulled back into its trusty rhythm, resembling a well-rehearsed play. Strolling to the window, I leaned in to watch snow flurries dance gently outside, settling on the railing like dust on those neglected memories I was eager to leave behind. For once, I felt a twinge of direction instead of the endless treadmill of obligation. In that quiet moment, everything felt balanced and perfectly aligned. I turned off the kitchen light, letting the shadows take charge. I envisioned a life where I wasn't just the family's unpaid technician or their reliable safety net. No more playing the role of the good child. My essence was finally asserting itself, and it was strangely exhilarating. I would not repair what they continuously broke. The ball was no longer in my court. As morning light crawled across my floor, puncturing the silence, I awoke to my phone vibrating with the kind of urgency you'd expect when the world is ending. Alerts, missed calls, and voicemails flooded in, and somehow, I could already predict the cast of this melodrama. I drifted into the safe haven of coffee-making instead of diving into their demands, because caffeine always makes everything better. With steam swirling elegantly from my mug, I pressed my palms against its warmth, remembering that this moment was mine. Only when I felt sufficiently caffeinated did I pick up the rolling phone. The first voicemail from dear old Dad could only be described as a symphony of distress. "Call me immediately." Classic Dad. The next message had him saying something about family behavior, while the third was more frantic. Honestly, did he think that would jolt me into submission? Deleting them became a therapeutic act of liberation. Then, the familiar ping from Serena's message caught my eye. Panic escalated through the screen. You'd think the sky was falling. What did you do? They came to the house. Dad is furious. This is your fault. Oh, the lovely word fault, how it had haunted me since forever. It loomed large behind every request and expectation I didn't fulfill. With an exasperated sigh, I placed the phone face down. Today was not a day to be burdened. Today was about reclaiming the narrative and standing tall. The text message flashed across my screen, and my heart sank like a bowling ball in a kiddie pool. A lukewarm coffee nudged closer to the edge of my table while an image from an unfamiliar number pulled me into chaos. It was a snapshot of our old Seattle driveway, featuring two burly guys hefting Serena's car onto a flatbed truck. Serena was there too, a vision in slippers and tangled hair, looking unamused. Grant loomed in the background, phone in hand and an expression that could curdle milk. A text flashed beneath that photo, "We need to talk. Answer your phone." But I opted for the old-school approach, putting my phone aside and pretending this was just a casual Tuesday. By noon, I had exchanged my coffee for office neuroses. Denver's sunlight sliced through the glass building, glaring at me like a stern teacher. I navigated the lobby with a resolute stride, exuding all the composure I could muster, which at the moment was a mere facsimile of grace. Upon reaching the engineering floor, my co-founder Kai Mercer greeted me, his brow furrowed. "You okay?" he asked softly, with that uncanny ability to sense when words were better left unsaid. I replied with a single nod, communicating a world of struggle without uttering a sound. Some days, it was all about maintaining that facade. The day dissolved into a jumble of meetings, filled with legal jargon and server checks, while my phone buzzed like a caffeinated fly in my desk drawer. By 3, I finally caved and opened it to find a flurry of messages waiting for me. "Grant, you owe us an explanation." Heartwarming. "Serena, I can't believe you did this during Christmas week." Pure drama. "Elise, are you safe?" My mother's words cut through the noise. I typed, "I'm okay," and let my phone slip back into its prison, believing silence was golden. The day dragged on like a toddler with a nap refusal. Around 5, I heard the elevator ding, a sound that slipped ominously through my consciousness. Footsteps followed, bold and familiar, signaling an impending showdown. Grant flung the door open, his face an angry sculpture, with Serena clutching her composure and Elise trailing behind like a quiet ghost. My father entered, a storm cloud in human form, and said, "We need to discuss this." But I stood my ground, "There's nothing to discuss." The tension in the room thickened, a live wire buzzing in the air. "You had no right," Grant snapped. "You embarrassed us." His words hit the air, making it heavier, and I let them linger like an awkward silence. Finally, I spoke, "No. I'm not responsible for consequences of choices I didn't make." Family dynamics in the age of drama. His face twisted in annoyance. Family helps each other. Family invites each other to Christmas. I countered, voice steady. Even family doesn't send a bill as a substitute for a seat. Serena gasped. Elise looked ready to bolt. Grant pointed a finger at my phone, demanding, "Call them. Fix this." I met his wrathful gaze with cool defiance. The air between us could have frozen a 3-course meal. "I'm done being used," I declared, feeling a rush of liberation, like pulling off a band-aid in one swoosh. Recognition crept across his features, cutting through his anger. For once, he understood this was no negotiation. With a sharp turn, Grant muttered under his breath and stormed off, the tension trailing behind him like a bad smell. Serena followed, her expressive eyes filled with a whirlwind of frustration and fire. As the door swung shut, I felt an unshakable weight lift from my chest. It was my life, my choices. And for the first time in ages, I was choosing me. Elise lingered for a moment, her fingers lightly caressing the doorframe, as if it held the secrets of the universe. "I'm glad you're safe," she whispered, a tender farewell before she slipped away. With a soft click, the door sealed shut, marking the end of a chapter. I was left standing alone in the office, gazing at the vibrant city sprawled below through the glass. This time, the silence felt powerful, almost like it had a personality all on its own. Returning home that night, I was greeted by a dim apartment. The silence was pervasive, as there were no blinking notifications or buzzing reminders from my phone. It was as if the silence had become a structural element of my life, firmly in place, making it feel both sturdy and stabilizing. I placed my keys down and moved toward the window, leaning against it as I usually did when lost in thought, exploring my reflections amid the quiet splendor of Denver. From my perch, the city glimmered beneath me, twinkling lights reminiscent of painterly constellations. It didn't care about my past, it merely reflected my ongoing transformation. Busy thoughts about who I used to be bounced around in my mind like a game of ping-pong, but beneath it all was a sense of clarity. After making myself a steaming cup of tea, I embraced the chilly, crisp air on the balcony, a soothing balm after a day filled with noise. As I held the mug with both hands, the warm steam danced against my face, while my breath lingered in the cold night air, vanishing like my old insecurities. No triumphant sense of victory rushed over me. Instead, there was space and abundance of it, filling my being. It allowed me to confront years spent contorting myself to satisfy others' expectations, and here I was finally realizing that stepping away didn't equal rebellion, it was a powerful act of survival. In my apartment, the soft glow of lights caressed the hardwood floor, revealing simple yet comforting details: a jacket draped over a chair, a tidy stack of work files on the table. Contemplating Elise's earlier concern, "Are you safe?" lingered in my chest, echoing louder than anything else from that day. I once mistaken silence for punishment, thought isolation was failure, but here, embraced by the cold wind, I found something liberating. Watching a car glide by below, headlights tracing the building's edges, I felt no need to glance back at my past. Instead, I embraced the quiet life unfolding ahead, marked by intentional choices that finally felt like my own. After finishing my tea, I placed the mug down, allowing the night to envelop me like a cherished blanket of liberation, open and light, a far cry from my earlier entanglements. I closed the balcony door and felt the latch click softly, sealing off the whispers of the past. No trailing footsteps or lingering voices followed, just the steady hum of a life I had seized on my own terms. I had often believed that letting go was the steepest hill to conquer, but true enlightenment arrived when I realized how long I had carried a burden that never belonged to me. In that moment, silence morphed from absence into a powerful anthem of freedom.